Today, I'm going to show you how to install RetroPie on the Game Boy inspired GPi case by Retroflag. Stay tuned. As a follow-up on our last video from this Retroflag GPi case, I said I was going to do another video where I show you how to install the operating system. And that's actually what we're going to do today. I'm going to be installing RetroPie on this GPi case because you know this thing is an amazing little retro console, but it doesn't do you much good if you don't have an operating system on it. So to start out with, what we're going to need is we need an SD card as well as an SD card reader. And what we're going to do is we're going to install RetroPie onto this SD card. And then there's some modifications that we need to make to that install in order for it to work on the GPi case. And I'll show you how to do that. But to start out with, let's go ahead and flash this card. Okay, so now that we got our SD card in an SD card reader, we're going to stick it in. And we should get an empty drive just like we have right here. So we're going to go ahead and close this. And the first thing that we want to do is open up the Raspberry Pi imager. Go ahead and hit yes to the security screen. And this is really simple. And this is the same as installing RetroPie on any Raspberry Pi. You choose your OS, you go down to RetroPie right here on the list. And then you decide which version of RetroPie that you want. Now, obviously, we're installing it on a Raspberry Pi Zero, so we're going to have to do the Raspberry Pi 1 and 0. So we're going to click on that, and then we want to choose the SD card. We're going to choose the 32 gig card that I just stuck in my card reader. And then we're going to push the right button. And then hit yes to continue. Now, this is going to take a minute to get all the way through. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward it. And I'll see you when it's done. All right, now that it's finished verifying, we should get a prompt here, and here we go. So we're finished. We're going to go ahead and hit continue, and then we can close the Raspberry Pi imager. Now the next thing we need to do is pull the SD card out of your computer and plug it directly back in. So now what we need to do is click over on your start menu, open up your file explorer, and go to this PC. Now we want our USB drive. It's going to be about a 250 meg partition. This is going to be our boot partition. It should have the label boot, but for some reason it doesn't. So just disregard that and open it up. And here's all of our boot code to actually get the Raspberry Pi booted up into RetroPie. So we're going to have to modify this a little bit. And the way we do that is open up your browser and you want to go to download.retroflag.com. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll leave this link in the description below. Now the first thing that we want is this install script for the GPi case. So we're going to click on download. And it's going to download that script, and then we're going to show it in folder. And here it is right here. So what we want to do is open up this script and then open up this again. And then right when you see the README, you're going to see this folder here. You're going to want to drop this folder into your boot folder right here. And then go ahead and open it up. And then you want to hit this script right here, the install patch. And when you do that, this is going to come up and tell you it copied everything. You go ahead and hit enter to continue. And that's it. So now this thing is actually ready to boot. However, there's a few more things that we're going to want to do first. Like for instance, it's going to be really hard to connect Wi-Fi on this thing when you don't have access to a keyboard. So we're going to take care of the Wi-Fi ahead of time. And to do that, we're going to go down and we need to create a WPA supplicant config file. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it over to the boot folder. And then I'm going to hit right click and hit edit with Notepad++. I highly recommend getting this program. This is the best way to edit text files, and I'll go ahead and leave a link to that in the description as well. All right, so now that we have this opened up, what you want to do is you want to change these two lines right here, the SSID and the PSK for password. And keep in mind that the Raspberry Pi Zero will not connect to a 5G network. I made this mistake when I first set this thing up, connecting it to my 5G network, and it didn't work. It has to connect to a 2.4 gig network. So put your SSID here for your 2.4 gig network. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And then also, while you're here, go ahead and enter your password. And after you do that, go ahead and hit the save button. And then go ahead and close Notepad. And now from there, there's one more thing that I would recommend doing, and this is just going to make things a little bit easier later on. First thing, what you're going to want to do is go down to View and click on File Name Extensions. And that's going to show all the extensions to everything that you have in this folder. So what you're going to want to do is right-click in this folder and hit New and write Text Document. And then this text document, for the name, I want you to delete everything, even the file extension. And then just type in capital letters SSH and hit Enter. And then it's going to ask you if you're sure you want to change the file extension. You're going to hit yes. And what this is going to do, it's just telling the Raspberry Pi that you want SSH enabled. This is just a quicker way to do it, so you don't have to go through the menu and do it after you boot it up. This way it can be done during the first boot. So from this point, we're just about ready. Now the next thing that we need to do is click on this PC. Go ahead and right click on this USB drive and hit eject. All right, now that we have the SD card flashed and the boot partition modified, we need to go ahead and take this SD card and install it into our Raspberry Pi Zero. And to do that, let me show you how. Okay, so we have our SD card in hand and we need to get it into our GPi case. And the way you do that is you take the cartridge that you have your Raspberry Pi Zero installed in and just pull it out of the back of the case. And then from there, you want to pull this little door open right here. And to do that, this door is kind of hard sometimes. So you actually just kind of grab underneath it and just pull it forward just like that. And then once you do that, you can take your SD card and you want to have the label facing the back side of the cartridge for the SD card. And then you plug this into the little slot right here. Just like that, and then close the door. And there you go. And then you take your cartridge and you stick it into your case, and then you can boot up RetroPie for the first time. Now, if you ever want to take this SD card out, I highly recommend getting yourself a pair of these right here. These are just little 45-degree angle tweezers, and these make it really easy to grab a hold of the SD card and pull it out, because honestly, there's not a whole lot of other ways to get to it other than using tweezers. So now let's get this thing fired up and boot it up for the first time. So we're going to go ahead and hit the power button and give it a little bit to fire up. It's actually going to go through a couple different boot cycles because it has to resize the partition and things of that nature when it first fires up. So once it does all of those little maintenance routines, then it will fire up into RetroPie. And I'll go ahead and skip ahead until we get it first boot. All right, so the first thing that you're going to have to do after you get it fired up is you have to configure the controller on it. So to do that, you just hold down the A button in order to start the controller configuration, and then you want to go through and follow the instructions to set up the controller for the case. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick, and I'm going to fast forward this section. And then from this point, once you configure all of your buttons, you're also going to have to configure the two buttons underneath too. So to do those, you just reach out underneath and you go ahead and push each one. And then after those ones are configured, you want to hold the A button for all of the controls that you don't actually have, like, you know, your different thumb controls and things like that. So to do that, you just hold it down And by holding the A button down, it skips that one so it doesn't actually associate it with any particular control. So I'm going to fast forward again until I get to the end of this menu. Okay, after we're at the end, then we just hit OK, and it's going to give you a warning that you didn't actually select a hotkey. And if you push yes, it will just do the default, which is the select button. So I'm going to hit yes, and then it's going to take a second to save all of its changes, and then we'll be into RetroPie. All right, there we go. Now we're in RetroPie, and as you can see, there's nothing here, only a configuration. So what we want to do is we want to open up configuration, and we want to scroll down to show IP address. It's going to be the third from the bottom. So we're going to hit OK. And it's going to take a minute, but there we go. So now, as we can see from the top right here, my IP address for this one is 192.168.0.129. Now we want to keep that IP address in mind. If you need to, write it down, because we're going to need it in the next step. And we're going to move on to that right now. All right, so we've gotten this far, and now to move on to the next step, there's one thing that you're going to need, or at least something that I highly recommend. I would use the USB to DC jack adapter that came with your GPi case just to help save battery power, because while we're doing some of these functions, it's a really bad idea for your GPi case to lose power because it could damage the operating system. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and plug this into a USB port on our computer, and then plug this DC jack into the side of the case so we can move on to the next step, which is going to be on the computer. So let's get to that now. Before we install the shutdown script, there's one thing that we need to make sure to do in order for the shutdown script to work. And what that is you want to flip this thing over, open the battery compartment, and you want to go ahead and pull your batteries out of the compartment. And now see that little switch right there? You want to make sure that switch is pointed in this direction right here in order for the shutdown script to work. Once you flip that switch over, then you can go ahead and reinstall your batteries. Reinstall your battery door. And fire the system up. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to want to do now that we're back in Windows again is go ahead and open your browser, and we want to install the safe shutdown script on this thing. That way, when you hit the power button, it doesn't just crash the GPi case. It actually goes through and sends a shutdown signal to the Raspberry Pi Zero and allows it to shut down gracefully. Now to do that, we're just going to go ahead and click on this button right here, and it's going to send us over to GitHub. And then from there, what we want to do is scroll down, and right here you can see the Retroflag GPi case, and there's two different shutdown scripts. One of them's for RetroPie and one of them's for recalbox. Now we want the one for RetroPie, so this is the command that we're going to need to run. However, in order to run this on your GPi case, we're going to have to open up an SSH terminal. Now to do that in Windows 10, it's really easy. You just go ahead and click on your start button, start typing command, and go ahead and open up the command prompt. Now Windows 10 supports SSH natively within Windows 10. I'm not sure when they implemented this. I don't know if it's always been the case with Windows 10, but it works now. So what we're going to do is we're going to type SSH space, and then we want to type pi at, and now you need to type the IP address that you got before. So it's going to be 192.168.0.129 is mine. However, your IP address is going to be the IP address that you got from the last step. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter. And it's going to ask us if we want to continue. Go ahead and type yes, hit enter. And now it's going to ask you for your password. Now, the default password for RetroPie is Raspberry. So go ahead and type Raspberry. And there we go. Now the first thing that we're going to want to do is change the default password. So to do that, you just type PASSWD, and you're going to have to type the old password one more time. So type Raspberry. And now type your new password. And then retype it again. And there we go. So now our password's updated. So now The next stage is we're going to go back to GitHub here, and we're going to highlight this command right here. We're going to hit copy, and then come over here, and you should just hit your right click button, and it should automatically paste in what you had in your clipboard. And then go ahead and hit enter, and it's going to run that command on your Raspberry Pi Zero, and it's going to download everything it needs for the shutdown script. Once this script finishes, it's actually going to restart your GPi case. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward it until we get to that point. All right, now it's going to reboot the GPi case. And you can see the reboot right there. And it's going to automatically boot you out of your SSH connection, obviously, because the RetroPie just rebooted. So it's going to take a second for it to boot back up. And once it does, I'm going to show you a couple more tweaks that I like to do on this thing. All right, now that it's fired back up, we can go ahead and SSH back into the RetroPie. And to do that, we're going to come down to our command prompt here, and we're just going to push the up button, and that's going to give us our last command that we just ran. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter, and it's going to ask us for a password. We're going to want to use our new password that we had just changed. I'm going to type that in, and it should give us access to our RetroPie again. All right, so here we go. So now the next thing that we're going to want to do is, I personally like the default RetroPie theme. However, you really can't see it very well on this screen. So I actually recommend this theme right here. It's the Super Retroboy theme. It works really well. And the way that we're going to get this onto our RetroPie is go ahead and come down to, I'll actually leave a link. This is on GitHub right here. I'll leave a link to this in the show notes. But we're going to go ahead and hit on code. We're going to highlight the HTTPS address. We're going to hit copy, and then we're going to go back into our command prompt here. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to type cd root etc. And then you're going to want to go into emulation station. And then from there, you want to go into the themes directory. And now here we have Carbon is the only theme installed. And this is the default theme for RetroPie. So what we want to do is we want to actually copy the Super Retroboy theme over into this folder. And the way we do that is type sudo git, G-I-T, clone. And now after that, we're going to want to have to paste in the link that we had just copied before. So go ahead and right click on your command prompt, and it'll give you that list right there, and then hit the enter button, and it'll go ahead and download, or it'll clone that GitHub into your themes directory. So now if we hit ls for list, we can see that Super Retroboy is sitting right there on the list. Now to enable this, let me show you how to do it. Okay, from the GPi case, you're going to want to go to hit the start button right here. And then from there, you want to go down to UI settings, hit the A button. Then you want to scroll down until you find theme set right here. And you want to just push your right button over, and that will go on to the next one. You hit OK and then hit back. And there you go. It'll change your theme to something that's a little bit more visually appealing. Now let's get back into Windows, and I'm going to show you another little tweak that we have to do here. Okay, we're almost done. So the next thing that we need to do is there's a command that we need to run in RetroPie, because otherwise if you don't run this, the volume is going to be so low you're not even going to be able to hear it. You want to type in amixer, S-S-E-T, space, headphone, capital, 100%, and we hit enter, and this right here will increase your volume on your RetroPie all the way up to 100%. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and close command prompt, and now we got to move on to the next step, is to how to actually put ROMs onto your RetroPie. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is copy a ROM to RetroPie so we can actually play a game here. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and click Start, click on our File Explorer, and then you want to type in / RetroPie. And then go ahead and hit enter. And now we're going to want to go here into the ROMs directory. And then from there, these are all the different consoles that your RetroPie can emulate. So I'm going to put a Super Nintendo ROM on here. So I'm going to go down to SNES, Open that up. And now we need to drop whatever ROMs that we want into this folder. So I'm going to do that right now. And here's the ROM I plan on dropping, Super Mario All-Stars. We're going to drop it in here. It's going to take a second to copy. And now, once we have this copied into the folder, there's a trick in order to save yourself a little bit of time to get RetroPie to recognize this ROM. So to do that, we're going to move back over to our GPi case. Okay, so from your GPi case, what you're going to want to do is click on Start. And now you're going to want to scroll down to Quit. And then go ahead and hit A on Quit. And then the first one says Restart Emulation Station. Now we're going to hit OK and hit Yes. And this is just going to restart Emulation Station rather than restarting the entire operating system. And as you can see, once we're back up, we can see we now have Super Nintendo. We'll go ahead and click on that. And we have Super Mario All-Stars. We'll go ahead and click on that to open it. And it should fire up and start. And there we go. It's that easy. If you ever want to get out of a game, push Start and Select at the same time, and it'll bring you back to the RetroPie home menu. And there you go. That's all it takes to get RetroPie running on a GPi case. Now, there's lots of other things that you can do with RetroPie, and I'll probably do some other videos in the future showing how to do those. For instance, like enabling cheats, so you can actually run Game Genie style cheats on your emulated ROMs. I may do a video in the future about that. Let me know in the comments if that's something that you'd be interested in. There may be a couple of modifications that I'm going to do to this thing. I'm not going to really say what they are yet, but D-pad might be one of them for sure. As you can see from my last video, I'm not a fan of the D-pad on this thing, but other than that, this thing is a solid little device. So hopefully this was helpful to you. While I have you here, I also have a website at cybercputech.com. That website has all the show notes to the videos that I have on this page, as well as someday I'll actually start selling my t-shirts on there. But in the meantime, you can always pick up my shirts in a link in the description below. Also, follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter at cybercpu, as well as Instagram at cybercpu as well. If you enjoyed this video, then please like it. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell icon so you can be notified of future videos. I do a new video every week. And hey, while you're here, check out a couple of these videos. Have a great day.